The leather briefcase hit the marble floor with a sound that made everyone turn. It was 7 in the morning, and the CEO, tall, sharp-suited, untouchable, had just walked past without noticing. But the little girl noticed. She always did. Her tiny fingers wrapped around the handle, far too heavy for a 5-year-old, and she ran. "You forgot your lunch, Daddy," she called out, her voice bright against the cold Manhattan wind. The man stopped. He turned, and for the first time in what must have been years, something flickered behind those steel-gray eyes. Confusion, maybe, or something deeper. The girl wasn't his daughter. He knew that. Everyone knew that. But she smiled at him like he was, like she'd been waiting her whole life to say that word. And in that moment, between the briefcase and the lie, between a millionaire who had everything and a child who had nothing but hope, something impossible began. Megan Mitchell's hands moved on autopilot, wiping down the espresso machine for the 3rd time that morning. The rhythm was familiar, comforting even circular motions that matched the loop of her thoughts. Bills due Friday. Chloe's school shoes falling apart. The landlord's warning about late rent. She'd stopped counting her problems around the time she stopped believing in solutions. Morning brew coffee smelled like burnt hope and yesterday's dreams, but it was hers. Well, not hers. She just worked there. 6 days a week, sometimes 7 when Gary needed coverage. The tips were decent on good days, barely enough on most. Chloe sat in the corner booth like she had every morning for the past 6 months. A sketch pad open in front of her, crayons scattered like tiny soldiers across the worn vinyl. She was drawing again. Always drawing. Families, mostly. A mommy, a daddy, a little girl holding both their hands. Megan pretended not to notice, the same way she pretended not to hear when Chloe whispered goodnight to the empty space beside her bed, the space where a father should be. The space that would always be empty because the man who should have filled it had disappeared the moment he saw 2 pink lines on a plastic stick. "Not ready for this," he'd said, like fatherhood was a jacket you could shrug off when the weather changed. The door chimed at 7:02. Megan didn't need to look up. James Cooper arrived every morning at 7 sharp, ordered the same thing, black coffee, no sugar, nothing else, and left by 7:15. He never smiled, never made small talk, never looked at anyone longer than necessary. In 6 months, he'd spoken maybe 20 words to her, all transactional. Coffee. Thanks. Keep the change. She knew his name only because it was printed on the credit card he slid across the counter, the same black card that probably had no limit. The same card that represented everything she'd never have. But today, something was different. James Cooper stood at the counter, his coffee growing cold in his hand, staring at nothing, or maybe staring at everything. His jaw was tight, his shoulders rigid under that perfectly tailored suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent. Megan had learned to read people in this job. The tourists who overtipped because they felt guilty about something. The Wall Street types who undertipped because they felt entitled to everything. The lonely ones who lingered over empty cups because going home meant going back to silence. James Cooper was the last kind. She'd known it the first time she saw him. Loneliness wasn't always loud. Sometimes it wore expensive cologne and Italian leather shoes. "Your coffee, sir," she said quietly, sliding a fresh cup toward him. He blinked, as if waking from something. "You've been holding that one for 10 minutes. It's cold." He looked down at the cup in his hand, genuinely surprised to find it there. Then he looked at her. Really looked at her. Not through her, not past her, but at her. Megan felt something shift in her chest, uncomfortable and unfamiliar. She turned away quickly, busying herself with the register. She couldn't afford to feel anything for men like him, men who lived in a different world. Men who wouldn't look twice at a 27-year-old single mother who smelled like coffee grounds and broken promises. Chloe chose that moment to appear at the counter, her crayon-stained fingers clutching a drawing. "Mommy, look! I drew us a house." Megan glanced down at the paper. A small house with a red door. 3 stick figures standing in front. A sun in the corner, smiling like suns do in children's drawings, like happiness was that simple. It's beautiful, baby. Now go sit down, okay? Mommy's working. But Chloe's attention had already shifted. She was staring at James Cooper with the kind of unfiltered curiosity only children possess. Why don't you ever smile, mister? Megan's heart stopped. Chloe, that's not polite. But James had crouched down, bringing himself to eye level with the little girl. Up close, Chloe could see that his eyes weren't cold at all. They were sad. The kind of sad that had been there so long it had forgotten how to leave. I guess I forgot how, he said simply. Chloe tilted her head, considering this. My mommy says smiling is free. Even when we don't have money for other things, we can always smile. Something cracked in James's expression. Something small but significant. He stood up slowly, adjusting his cufflinks. And for the first time in 6 months, his mouth curved upward. It wasn't much, barely qualified as a smile. But it was there. Your daughter's wise, he said to Megan, and then he was gone, the door chiming behind him, his coffee forgotten on the counter. Megan watched him disappear into the morning crowd, her heart doing something strange and unwelcome in her chest. Chloe tugged at her apron. See, Mommy? I made him smile. Yes, Megan thought. You did. And that might be the most dangerous thing of all. The briefcase sat on the counter like an accusation. Black leather, heavy, expensive. The kind of thing that held important papers and life-changing decisions. James Cooper had been gone for 3 minutes before Megan noticed it. She picked it up, surprised by its weight, and felt panic flutter in her chest. He'd need this. Whatever was inside, it was important. Men like him didn't forget things. They controlled things. They managed things. They certainly didn't leave $1,000 briefcases in coffee shops. Mommy! The suit man forgot his bag. Chloe was already moving toward the door, faster than Megan could stop her. Chloe, wait. But her daughter was out the door, the briefcase clutched in both hands, running down the sidewalk with the determination of someone on a mission from God. Megan abandoned the counter, Gary's protests lost in the ringing of the door chime, and ran. The morning air hit her like a slap, cold and sharp, and she could see Chloe's blonde ponytail bouncing ahead, see James Cooper's tall figure half a block away, see the moment when everything would either be fine or become a disaster she couldn't predict. Sir, sir! Chloe's voice carried in that way children's voices do, clear and bright and impossible to ignore. James turned. He saw the briefcase first, then the little girl holding it, then Megan running behind, breathless and terrified. And then Chloe said it, the words that would change everything. You forgot your lunch, Daddy. The sidewalk seemed to tilt. Megan stumbled to a stop, her hand flying to her mouth. No, 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 no. Not this. Not now. Not to him. James Cooper stood frozen, his face a careful blank, while every person within earshot turned to stare. An old woman smiled. A jogger slowed down, curious. A businessman smirked. And Chloe, sweet, oblivious Chloe, beamed up at James like she'd just given him the greatest gift in the world. Chloe! Megan's voice came out strangled. Honey, this isn't, he's not. But James had already crouched down again, taking the briefcase from Chloe's small hands. Thank you, he said softly. That was very kind of you. Chloe's smile grew wider. You're welcome, Daddy. Megan wanted to disappear, wanted the sidewalk to open up and swallow her whole. I'm so sorry, Mr. Cooper. She didn't mean. She thought I was her father. It wasn't a question. His eyes met hers over Chloe's head, and Megan saw something there she couldn't name. Understanding, maybe. Or recognition. Yes. No. Megan was fumbling, her cheeks burning. She's never met her father. Sometimes she gets confused. I'm so sorry. James stood, the briefcase in one hand, and looked down at Chloe. The little girl was still smiling, completely unaware of the mortification radiating from her mother. "Do you work in that big building?" Chloe asked, pointing at the glass tower behind them. "I do," James said. "It must be nice. Being that high up, you can probably see everything from there." James's throat worked. "You can see a lot, but not everything." Chloe nodded solemnly, as if this made perfect sense. "Mommy says the best things are the ones you feel, not the ones you see, like hugs, and love, and pancakes on Sunday." Despite everything, James laughed. Actually laughed. It was a rusty sound, like something that hadn't been used in years, but it was real. Megan felt her heart do that strange thing again, that dangerous thing, and she grabbed Chloe's hand before anything else could happen. "We should get back. Mr. Cooper has important work to do. Say goodbye, Chloe." "Goodbye, Mr. Daddy," Chloe said cheerfully. And before Megan could correct her, before she could apologize again, James spoke. "James. You can call me James." The rest of Monday passed in a blur of coffee orders and whispered conversations. Gary cornered her during the lunch rush. Was that James Cooper? The James Cooper? Megan focused on steaming milk, the hiss loud enough to pretend she couldn't hear. "The guy's a legend," Gary continued, oblivious. "Built his company from nothing. Started in some group home in Brooklyn. Now he's worth millions. Never married. Never seen with anyone. Some people say he's cold, like actually cold. No heart or something." Megan thought about the way James had looked at Chloe, the way his voice had softened, the smile that had cracked through. Maybe people don't know him as well as they think. Gary shrugged. "Maybe. Or maybe rich guys are all the same. They take what they want and leave the rest." That night, in their tiny apartment that smelled like old pipes and younger dreams, Megan tucked Chloe into bed. The worn comforter was thin, the heating barely worked, but Chloe never complained. She just curled into her mother's side and asked for a story. "Tell me about Daddy," she whispered. Megan's chest tightened. This again. Always this. "Baby, I've told you, you're Daddy. He wasn't ready to be a daddy. But that doesn't mean you're not loved. I love you enough for two parents." Chloe was quiet for a moment. Then, "But the Mr. Today, James, he could be a good daddy. I can tell." "Chloe. He has sad eyes, Mommy. Like he lost something too. Maybe he lost his little girl. Maybe that's why he looked at me like that." Megan kissed her daughter's forehead, breathing in the baby shampoo smell that wouldn't last much longer. The innocence that the world would eventually take. "Sleep, baby. Tomorrow's another day." But Megan didn't sleep. She lay awake in the dark, thinking about steel-gray eyes and rusty laughs, and the way James Cooper had looked at her daughter like she was something precious, something he'd been searching for. And that thought terrified her, because Megan had learned the hard way that when something seemed too good, it usually was. That men didn't stay. That hope was just another word for eventual disappointment. That little girls who called strangers daddy were asking to get their hearts broken. She'd protect Chloe from that. She had to, even if it meant protecting her from kindness. Even if it meant protecting her from a man who might actually be different. Even if it meant protecting her from hope itself. Tuesday morning arrived with rain, the kind of cold October rain that soaked through cheap jackets and reminded people why they hated this city. Megan and Chloe arrived at Morning Brew 20 minutes before opening, both of them damp and shivering. Chloe's shoes squelched with each step, the sole half detached, flapping like a tired mouth. Megan added new shoes to the mental list she couldn't afford. Gary was already inside, counting registers, and he looked up when they entered. "Your friend came by yesterday afternoon, after you left." Megan's hands paused on the door. "What friend?" "The CEO. James Cooper. Asked when you worked. Asked if you'd been here long. Asked if..." Gary paused, grinning. "Asked if you were single. Heat flooded Megan's face. You didn't answer him. Tell me you didn't answer him. Relax. I told him to mind his own business. But Megan... Gary's grin faded. Be careful, yeah? Guys like that don't ask questions like that for no reason. At 7:03, the door chimed. James Cooper stepped inside, shaking rain from his dark hair, his suit somehow still perfect despite the weather. But today, he wasn't alone. He carried 2 cups from the fancy place 3 blocks over, the place where coffee cost $8 and came with foam art. He set one in front of Megan. You looked tired yesterday. Thought you might need this. Megan stared at the cup like it might explode. I can't accept this, Mr. Cooper. James. Mr. Cooper. She repeated firmly. This is inappropriate. You're a customer. I'm someone who helped me yesterday when she didn't have to. Someone whose daughter ran after me to return something I'd foolishly left behind. Someone who works 2 jobs and still finds time to raise a kind, thoughtful child. Megan's breath caught. How did you know about 2 jobs? You have calluses that don't come from making coffee. Your hands shake sometimes, like you don't sleep enough. And last night at 9, I saw you cleaning offices in my building. The world tilted again. You saw me. I work late. I see a lot of things people think I don't notice. Chloe appeared then, sliding into the booth with her crayons, and her face lit up when she saw James. You came back. Did you smile today? James looked at the little girl, and his expression softened in a way Megan was beginning to recognize. Not yet, but the day's still young. I can help you practice. Mommy says practice makes perfect. Before Megan could intervene, James was sitting across from Chloe in the booth, his expensive suit and her crayon-stained fingers somehow occupying the same space. He looked absurd there, completely out of place, and somehow completely right. What are you drawing? He asked. Chloe held up her picture. The same house, the same 3 figures. But today, one of them was taller, wearing what might be a suit. That's my mommy. That's me. And that's you. James went very still. Me? You could be my daddy, if you wanted, if Mommy said yes. You have to ask Mommy for things. That's the rule. Megan rushed over, her heart hammering. Chloe, sweetheart, that's not Mr. Cooper doesn't want to. Why not? Chloe's eyes were wide, confused. Don't you like us? Chloe. James's voice was rough. I like you very much. You're possibly the most interesting person I've met in 10 years. The question hung in the air like smoke. Megan wanted to explain, wanted to protect her daughter from this rejection, wanted to save them both from the embarrassment. But James was still looking at Chloe, his eyes bright with something that might have been tears. It's not that simple, little one. Being a father, it's a big responsibility. It means being there, every day. Not leaving, not giving up. I know, Chloe said seriously. That's why I picked you. You have staying eyes. Staying eyes? Eyes that look like they've been sad for a long time. But sad people don't leave. They know what leaving feels like. They don't do it to other people. Megan felt something crack inside her chest. Her 5-year-old daughter, explaining the world to a millionaire. Her 5-year-old daughter, seeing things Megan was too scared to see. James reached across the table and gently tapped Chloe's drawing. Can I keep this? Chloe nodded eagerly. But you have to promise to look at it every day. To remember. Remember what? That somebody picked you. That somebody wants you to be their daddy. James folded the drawing carefully, tucking it into his jacket pocket, right over his heart. When he looked up at Megan, his eyes were raw. Exposed. I'd like to take you both to dinner, if you'll let me. Not because I feel sorry for you. Not because I think you need saving. But because your daughter taught me something I'd forgotten. What's that? Megan whispered. That it's okay to want things you don't deserve. The week passed in a strange, suspended reality. James came to morning brew every morning. Sometimes he brought coffee for Megan. Sometimes he brought books for Chloe. Small things. Thoughtful things. A children's book about a girl who loved art. A sketch pad with real drawing paper. A box of 64 crayons, the kind with the sharpener built in. Megan wanted to refuse them. Wanted to maintain the distance that kept them safe. But Chloe's joy was impossible to deny, and Megan found herself softening despite every instinct screaming at her to stop. They had dinner on Friday. Nothing fancy. A small Italian place in Brooklyn where the pasta was homemade and the owner knew everyone's name. James looked different there, somehow, less intimidating, more human. He told them about growing up in the group home, about being 8 years old and believing he'd never have a family, about building a company because that was something he could control, something that wouldn't leave him. But it's not enough, he said quietly, watching Chloe color on the paper tablecloth the owner had cheerfully provided. I have everything I thought I wanted, and I've never been more alone. Megan's throat was tight. You don't know us. Not really. What if we're not what you think we are? What if you're exactly what I think you are? What if I'm exactly what I appear to be? Lonely, desperate, wanting something I have no right to want. And what's that? James looked at her then, really looked at her, and Megan felt the world narrow to just the two of them. A second chance, a reason to come home. A little girl who calls me daddy even though I haven't earned it, and a woman who makes me want to earn it. Megan's hands trembled. This is crazy. You're a CEO. I'm a barista with a 5-year-old and more debt than hope. This doesn't work. In the real world, this doesn't work. Maybe the real world's been wrong about a lot of things. Maybe we've all been playing it safe for so long we forgot what it feels like to want something impossible. And if you change your mind, if you wake up one day and realize you've made a mistake, do you know what that would do to her? Do you know what that would do to me? James reached across the table, his hand covering hers. His palm was warm, solid, real. I've spent my entire life afraid of exactly that. Afraid of wanting something and losing it. Afraid of loving someone and watching them leave. But you know what's worse than that? What? Living so carefully that you never live at all. Chloe taught me that. She runs after strangers with their forgotten briefcases. She smiles at sad people and asks them why they've forgotten how to smile. She picks someone to be her father and doesn't care that it's impossible. She just believes. When did we stop doing that? When did we decide that being safe was better than being happy? Megan felt tears on her cheeks. She hadn't realized she was crying. I can't afford to believe. Not anymore. I believed once. It didn't end well. I know. But I'm not him. I'm not your daughter's father. I'm not the man who left. I'm just someone who walked into a coffee shop 6 months ago and forgot he was human until a little girl reminded him. Chloe looked up from her coloring. Crayon paused mid-stroke. Are you crying, Mommy? Megan laughed through tears. Happy crying, baby. It's different. Is James going to be my daddy now? Megan looked at James. His eyes were steady, patient, waiting. I don't know, sweetheart. We'll see. But Chloe was already satisfied, already back to her drawing, already living in a world where impossible things happened every day. The following week was harder. Reality had a way of intruding on moments of hope. Gary cut Megan's hours. The coffee shop was struggling, he explained apologetically. Corporate was breathing down his neck. He'd have to let someone go by the end of the month. Megan smiled and nodded and felt panic claw at her throat. She'd been here before. The moment when the ground started crumbling. The moment when she had to choose between pride and survival. That evening, she took on extra cleaning shifts. 3 buildings instead of 2. She worked until her hands bled and her back screamed and Chloe fell asleep on the break room couch because there was no one to watch her. At midnight, Megan sat on the floor of an empty office, her head in her hands, and let herself break. Just for a moment. Just long enough to remember why she kept going. The sound of footsteps made her look up. James stood in the doorway, still in his suit, His tie loosened. He'd been working late. Again. Always. "You should be home," she said, wiping her eyes roughly. "So should you. I need the money. I know. Megan, don't. Please don't offer to help. Don't make this harder than it already is." James slid down the wall until he was sitting beside her on the floor, his several $1,000 suit on the office carpet, his shoulder touching hers. "I'm not offering to help. I'm offering to be honest." "About what?" "About the fact that I'm falling for you. About the fact that I think about Chloe every morning when I wake up and every night before I sleep. About the fact that I haven't felt this terrified or this alive in 15 years. Megan's breath caught. "You can't say things like that." "Why not?" "Because I might believe you. Because Chloe already believes you. Because if you're wrong, if you change your mind, it won't just hurt me, it'll hurt her. And I can survive a lot of things, but I can't survive watching my daughter's heart break." James turned to face her, his eyes intense. "Then tell me to leave. Tell me to stop coming to the coffee shop. Tell me to forget about you both. Because if you don't, I'm going to keep falling. I'm going to keep showing up. I'm going to keep wanting this impossible thing until it's not impossible anymore. And if I can't do that, if I'm too scared, then be scared with me. Be terrified with me. But don't do it alone. Not anymore." Megan kissed him. She didn't plan to, didn't think about it, just leaned forward and pressed her lips to his, tasting coffee and desperation and something that might have been hope. James made a sound low in his throat, his hand coming up to cup her face, and for a moment, the world was simple. Just two people who'd been alone too long, finding each other in the wreckage. When they pulled apart, Megan was shaking. "This doesn't fix anything. I still don't have enough money. I'm still probably going to lose my job. I still don't know how to trust this." "I know. But you don't have to do it alone anymore. Let me help. Not because you're weak, not because you need saving, but because that's what people do when they care about each other. They help. They show up. They don't leave." Megan wanted to argue, wanted to push him away, wanted to protect herself the way she'd learned to protect herself. But she was so tired. And he was still there, still looking at her like she was something worth staying for. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay." The next morning, Megan woke to 17 missed calls and a voicemail from Gary. Her stomach dropped as she listened. "Megan, I'm sorry. Corporate made the decision. Your last day is Friday. I fought for you. I really did. But I'm sorry." The phone slipped from her hand. Friday. 3 days. 3 days to figure out how to pay rent, how to feed Chloe, how to keep the fragile life she'd built from collapsing entirely. She made it to the bathroom before she threw up, her body rejecting the panic flooding through her. When she came out, Chloe was awake, watching her with 2 knowing eyes. "Mommy, are we okay?" Megan knelt down, pulling her daughter close. "We're always okay, baby. We have each other. That's all we need." But Chloe wasn't convinced. 5-year-olds were perceptive that way. "You're lying. Grown-ups lie when they're scared." "I'm not scared." Megan lied. "You're shaking." Megan looked down at her hands. Chloe was right. She was shaking. Had been shaking since the voicemail, since Gary's apologetic voice, since reality had crashed back in. "Okay. Maybe I'm a little scared. But being scared doesn't mean we're not okay. It just means things are hard right now." "Can James help?" "No, baby. James has his own life, his own problems. We can't ask him to, but he wants to help," he told me. He said wanting to help people you care about is the best part of being a grown-up. Megan felt tears threaten again. Her daughter, her wise, impossible daughter, who saw the world in ways Megan had forgotten how to see it, who believed in things like kindness and second chances and men who kept their promises. "Maybe," Megan said softly, "maybe we can let him help. Just a little." Chloe beamed. Good, because I already called him. You what? Chloe held up Megan's phone, the screen still showing James's contact. He said to call any time. So I did. He's coming over. He said he'd be here in 20 minutes. Megan should have been angry. Should have lectured Chloe about boundaries and appropriate behavior and not calling people at 6 in the morning, but she couldn't find it in herself. Because part of her, the part she'd been trying to silence for weeks, was grateful, was relieved, was ready to stop carrying everything alone. 20 minutes later, there was a knock at the door. James stood in the hallway, dressed in jeans and a t-shirt for the first time since she'd met him. He looked younger, more real, less like an untouchable CEO and more like just a man. A man holding a bag of bagels and wearing concern in his eyes. Chloe called. I came. Is that okay? Megan stepped back, letting him in. Yeah, it's okay. They sat at the small kitchen table, Chloe between them, eating bagels with strawberry cream cheese. James didn't ask questions, didn't demand explanations, just sat there, solid and present, while Megan tried to find the words. Finally, she told him, about losing her job, about the rent due in 2 weeks, about the fear that maybe this time she wouldn't be able to fix it. James listened without interrupting. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, Work for me. Megan blinked. What? Work for me. I need someone I can trust. Someone organized. Someone who understands what it's like to fight for things. You'd be my personal assistant. It's a real job, Megan. With real pay, benefits, stability. I can't. Yes, you can. This isn't charity. I've been looking for someone for months. Every person they've sent me has been wrong. Too formal. Too afraid of me. Too focused on climbing ladders instead of actually doing the work. But you're different. You see people. You understand things. And you're not afraid to call me out when I'm being an idiot. Megan laughed despite everything. I've never called you an idiot. You did once, last week, when I tried to tip you $200 for a $5 coffee. You said, and I quote, That's idiotic. Keep your money. No one talks to me like that. Everyone should talk to me like that. Chloe tugged on James's sleeve. Does this mean you're going to be around more? James looked at the little girl, his expression softening in that way Megan was beginning to love. Would that be okay with you? Yes. Then you can be my daddy for real, not just pretend. Chloe, Megan warned gently. We talked about this. James isn't. Actually, James interrupted, his voice careful. I've been thinking about that. The room went silent. Megan's heart stopped. James took a breath, like he was about to jump off a cliff and wasn't sure he'd survive the fall. I don't know how to be a father. I never had one. I don't know the rules or the right things to say. But I know that when I'm with you both, I feel like I'm supposed to be there. Like I'm not making a mistake for once. Like maybe I was heading toward this moment my entire life and just didn't know it. He reached into his pocket and pulled out Chloe's drawing, the one she'd given him weeks ago. It was creased from being folded and unfolded, the edges soft from handling. I look at this every day, like you told me to, and every day I think about how lucky I'd be if this was my life. If you picked me, if I got to be the person in this picture. Megan couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't do anything but stare at this man who was offering her everything she'd been too afraid to want. You don't know what you're asking for, she whispered. I do. I'm asking for chaos. For crayon drawings on important documents. For sleepless nights when Chloe's sick. For parent-teacher conferences and birthday parties and all the messy, complicated, beautiful things that come with being part of a family. I'm asking for you, Megan. All of you. The debt, the fear, the strength, the way you fight for your daughter every single day without ever asking for help. I'm asking to be part of that fight. I'm asking to stop being alone. Chloe slipped out of her chair and wrapped her arms around James's neck. I told Mommy you had staying eyes. I was right. James hugged her back, and Megan saw his eyes close, saw him breathe her in like he was trying to memorize the moment. When he opened his eyes again, they were bright with unshed tears. "So, what do you say?" he asked Megan. "Do I get to be part of this family? Do I get to be Chloe's daddy for real?" Megan looked at her daughter, safe in James's arms. Looked at this man who'd been a stranger 6 weeks ago and now felt like something inevitable. Looked at the drawing on the table, the 3 figures holding hands, and she thought about all the ways she'd been hurt, all the walls she'd built, all the reasons this should be a terrible idea. Then she thought about what Chloe had said, about staying eyes, about believing in impossible things, about picking someone and trusting they'd stay. "Yes," she said, her voice breaking. "Yes, you get to be part of this family," Chloe squealed. James let out a breath he'd been holding for what might have been years, and Megan felt something she hadn't felt in a very long time. She felt hope. Real, terrifying, beautiful hope. The transition wasn't seamless. Nothing ever was. Megan started working for James the following Monday, and she quickly discovered that being a CEO's assistant was harder than it looked. There were schedules to manage, calls to field, meetings to coordinate. James was patient, teaching her the systems, introducing her to the team. Some people were kind, others were suspicious. A few whispered about favoritism, about inappropriate relationships, about gold-digging single mothers. Megan heard the whispers. She'd always been good at hearing the things people didn't say out loud. It hurt. But James was there. "Ignore them," he said one afternoon, finding her in the break room with red-rimmed eyes. "They don't know you. They don't know what you've survived. They don't get to define you. It's hard. I know. But you're not alone. You're never going to be alone again. I promise you that." He kept his promises. When Chloe got sick, he left a board meeting to drive them to urgent care. When Megan's landlord raised the rent, James found them a new apartment, bigger, safer, in a better neighborhood. Megan wanted to refuse, wanted to maintain her independence. But James was careful. He never made her feel small. Never made it about charity. "It's an investment," he explained. "In my family. That's what you are now. My family." 3 months passed. Then 6. The whispers faded. People got used to seeing Megan at James's side. Got used to the way his voice softened when he talked about Chloe. Got used to the photos on his desk, a little girl with blonde hair and a woman with tired eyes and a smile that was slowly learning to be permanent. Christmas came. Chloe's first real Christmas, with presents that weren't from thrift stores and a tree that wasn't made of plastic. They spent it in James's apartment, their apartment now, though Megan was still getting used to saying it, and Chloe opened presents with the kind of joy that made adults remember why the holiday existed. "This is the best Christmas ever," she announced, surrounded by wrapping paper and new crayons and books and toys. "Because I have a mommy and a daddy, and we're all together." James looked at Megan over Chloe's head. "She's right. This is the best Christmas ever." Megan's eyes were wet. "You've given us so much. I don't know how to thank you." "You already have. You let me in. You let me be part of this. That's more than I ever thought I'd have." On New Year's Eve, James proposed. Not with a fancy dinner or a grand gesture. Just the 3 of them in their living room, Chloe asleep on the couch between them, and James turning to Megan with a small velvet box. "I know this is fast. I know people will say it's too soon. But I've spent my whole life being careful, being safe, being alone. And I don't want to do that anymore. I want to wake up every morning with you. I want to help Chloe with her homework and mess up dinner and argue about whose turn it is to do the dishes. I want all of it. The boring parts, the hard parts, the parts that aren't romantic or exciting. I want the life we're building, and I want to make it official." Megan's hands were shaking as she took the box. Inside was a simple ring, elegant, understated, perfect. "Are you sure?" she whispered. "I've never been more sure of anything. I come with baggage. with history, with you come with strength, with courage, with a daughter who's taught me more about life than I learned in 35 years without her. You come with everything I've ever wanted and didn't know how to ask for. Megan slipped the ring on her finger. It fit perfectly. Yes, she said. Yes, to all of it. They got married in March. A small ceremony in the courthouse, with Chloe as the flower girl and a handful of friends as witnesses. No big reception. No fancy dress. Just two people who'd found each other in the wreckage making a promise to stay. Chloe held both their hands as they said their vows, and when the officiant pronounced them married, she shouted, "Finally!" so loudly that everyone laughed. That night, tucking Chloe into her new bed in her new room in the home they all shared, Megan felt something settle in her chest. Peace, maybe. Or just the absence of constant fear. "Mommy?" Chloe's voice was sleepy. "Yeah, baby? I'm glad I called him Daddy that day, even though he wasn't my daddy yet." Megan smiled, brushing hair from her daughter's forehead. "Me too, sweetheart. Me too." "Do you think he would have stayed anyway? Even if I hadn't said it?" Megan thought about James. About the way he'd looked at Chloe that first morning. About the briefcase and the coffee and the drawing he carried in his pocket. About staying eyes and second chances and impossible things that turned out to be real. "Yeah," she said softly. "I think he was always going to stay. We just had to give him a reason to." Love is a good reason. The best reason. Chloe yawned. "Good night, Mommy. Tell Daddy I love him." "I will, baby. I will." Megan found James in the living room, standing at the window looking out at the city. The lights stretched endlessly, a constellation of lives and stories and moments just like theirs. She slipped her arms around his waist, resting her head against his back. "She says she loves you." James's voice was rough. "I love her too. Both of you. More than I knew it was possible to love anything. Do you ever regret it? Walking into that coffee shop? Forgetting your briefcase? Letting a strange little girl call you Daddy?" James turned, pulling her close. "Not for a single second. That was the day my life started. Everything before was just practice. Just learning how to survive so I'd be ready when you both came along. We're a lot of work. The best things always are." Megan looked up at him. This man who'd been a stranger and was now her husband. Who'd been lonely and was now surrounded by crayon drawings and scattered toys and the beautiful chaos of family. "Thank you," she whispered. "For staying. For choosing us. For being the person Chloe saw that day. I should be thanking you. For letting me in. For trusting me with something so precious. For giving me a reason to be more than just successful. For making me a father." They stood there in the quiet. Two people who'd been broken in different ways, who'd found each other at exactly the right moment, who'd built something impossible out of hope and courage and a 5-year-old's belief that sad people don't leave. Outside, the city continued its endless rhythm, people rushing, people struggling, people searching for something they couldn't name, and in a small apartment on the 20th floor, a family settled in for the night. A family that shouldn't have existed. A family built on a mistaken identity and a forgotten briefcase and the simple truth that sometimes the best things in life are the ones we never see coming. Chloe dreamed of houses with red doors and families that stayed together. James dreamed of coffee shops and small hands and second chances. And Megan, who'd spent so long being afraid, finally dreamed of nothing at all. Because for the first time in years, she had everything she needed right here. Right now, right in front of her. In the morning, they'd wake up and do it all again. The mundane miracle of being together, of being chosen, of being loved. And that, Megan thought, as sleep pulled her under, was more than enough. It was everything.